Hi, I'm Rose, and you're listening to the Sovereign Soul podcast. I support people to live beyond ego and limitations to know true freedom. I want to talk about sovereignty yet again because sovereignty to me means that we are the drivers of our life and actually our entire existence. That our existence is not in the hands of destiny or fate or God. In a sense, it would kind of feel like it is, because there seems to be a closed circuit in the things that we experience, like they were preordained or pre-chosen. And I say pre-chosen because if we're sovereign, we have to believe that we choose the things that we experience. Everything. The families we're born into, the things that we experience in life, so the different circumstances, all of these things have to be chosen by us in order for us to be sovereign. If they're not chosen by us, that would mean that we're not sovereign. That would mean that we are driven by something else, some external thing, some external force. Now, my work is very much about helping people to reclaim that total autonomy over their life. In my life, this has been my main mission and purpose for me on a very personal level. And I've gone into it really, really deeply. I'm sure that there are much deeper ways to go into it, but I have gone into it very deeply on the spiritual and energetic side of things. And I would say the mental and emotional. And to a degree the physical, because I have been willing to look at the different systems that are in place on this physical planet, which definitely are not about people being autonomous or me being autonomous and having my sovereignty. So I've dived as deeply as I can. I'm not a scientist, and I wouldn't call myself a specialist in anything other than myself and how I function as a human being. And I can definitely see a lot of similarities in all of us based on the work that I do. And wanting people to reclaim sovereignty is really about freedom. The sovereignty is freedom. It means that you are actually connected to your free will. And free will is an interesting subject because what it implies is that, again, everything we're experiencing, we do choose. And that, to me, is empowering to know, but it's also quite frightening when people are choosing stuff that they don't feel conscious to the choice. They don't feel aligned to the choice. They feel a victim to the choice. And most scary of all is that if those choices are being put upon us through a form of manipulation or brainwashing, most people are not even aware of it. And this to me is scary but exciting at the same time, because it also means that somewhere in and amongst this brainwashing and feeling like we have no choice, we actually did have a choice somewhere. And if we had to rewind our stories, rewind the contracts that were formed, where did they start? And where did we sign away or give away that sovereignty of ourself and that actual free choice? So much so that we're not making those choices freely anymore. Like I say, it's from a subconscious world. And in psychology, they talk about it all the time, that most of what human beings experience in life is from the subconscious. Like up to 90% of our reality is experienced from the subconscious. The subconscious is the unknown, the autopilot, the thing that just, gets us through our survival, our defenses. But it doesn't have to be that way. And Carl Jung spoke about knowing ourselves and self-actualizing, from that being one of the most powerful things we can do. And I completely agree based on my experience. But we live in a world where people want to fit in more than know themselves. They want to believe that they would know themselves as a part of something bigger. And in a sense, maybe we're all like that. Even people who are trying to free themselves independently, or thinking like me, like, hey, if everybody knew themselves, then we wouldn't be in the mess that the world is in, which might be a bit of a arrogant thing to assume that I would even have some kind of answer like that for humanity. But I don't necessarily have an answer for humanity. I have an answer for me that has worked for me, and in advice and guidance that I have seen has worked and helped for others. And, slowly walked this path to some kind of inner freedom inside of myself. Claiming that inner freedom is not an easy feat. People don't want that because, like I said, they want to fit in. So usually people who operate like I do are considered by society to be abnormal and maybe even be freaks or totally taboo, non-scientific. And the irony of that is that more and more science is proving things around intuition and consciousness. And I say intuition and consciousness because consciousness is very individualized in each human being, and that consciousness has a vibration. And there is also collective consciousness within families, societies, religions, as well as the entire planet. And that consciousness is measured based on the vibration. And the vibration would definitely be, if you're looking at a fear-based vibration or a love-based vibration, that is the gauge for higher consciousness as opposed to lower consciousness. So love would be a higher consciousness vibration, and fear would be a lower consciousness vibration. Just a separation is a lower vibration, and oneness is a higher vibration. Like, these are things that can actually be measured, frequencies. And when we understand that, and if people wanted to take that responsibility to live in a higher frequency inside themselves, inside their consciousness, what they have to do is they have to be willing to let go of the parts of themselves which don't vibrate like that. So the parts that are attached to fear and separation. And again, people don't want to do that. They're really afraid to admit that they're separate, and then to have to embrace all the work and the responsibility that comes with fully taking responsibility for yourself on all levels in the entire universe. That is scary for people. That really is. But yet we sit in a situation where planet Earth is not moving forward on its consciousness. Maybe it's technological consciousness, but you've still got low consciousness underneath that's driving that technology. So therefore, technology isn't really serving humanity, rather than serving an agenda at the top of a food chain, which really is what it looks like. And in order for that to change, it would mean that people would have to change individually. People would have to take that responsibility for themselves to reclaim a sovereignty, to reclaim responsibility, and start driving their own lives, so that the leadership, which we are so dependent and reliant on in order to feel like we know who we are or how we fit in, that we didn't need that anymore, because we would just know who we were and how we fit into the bigger picture of the stuff that we are experiencing on Earth. It's not an easy thing to try and describe human consciousness or human behavior. Let's rather say human behavior, because mannerisms and patterns and conditionings and reactions and responses, they are like an illusion to most people and how they function. They just function from the subconscious part of their being and just keep running on that autopilot, not understanding the stuff behind it, or understanding that they would actually have more of a choice in how they respond and react, and the behaviors and the conditioning that they have, if they would unplug from this deep fear of not fitting in, allow themselves to be considered strange and weird, and some people will call it woo-woo, there will be a lot of backlash, but there will also be a lot of people who are connecting to something that is like an innate part of our being, our divinity. Because again, would we measure enlightenment as the high side of frequency, and fear, separation consciousness on the low side? And obviously there's loads of other frequencies in between that can be measured too. But we're not necessarily going to be embracing the ones and running towards others, which is exactly what we are doing. We're pushing certain aspects of the human condition away. And in this, we keep denying ourselves. We keep denying our sovereignty. We keep denying our free choice and our free will, because we think that our reactions need to be what we're told that they are and not what we know that they are. So we could go through any difficult experience in life in a bittersweet fashion by going, oh, this is painful, this is sad, yet at the same time I felt such love, or I felt such loss, or oh, this was the, one of the reasons why I even came to be about on earth, or whatever the things. We could always find the good in things, no matter what they are. We could learn about ourselves and see where we have bad boundaries or lack of respect, or we could learn about ourselves and see where we overstep others' boundaries and have a lack of respect. We have the power to see where we are manipulating others or where we are being manipulated. We have all of this power inside of ourselves to be the best version of ourselves always, to choose to live in this frequency that measures high, rather than the one that measures low. And a fact is, you feel better when you vibrate higher as opposed to vibrating lower. And what are the things that make us feel better? Well, kindness and empathy and connection and being seen and feeling like you have a oneness towards things. Being the best version of yourself that you can be is actually what makes us feel better. And not because you want to please your parents or your partner or your God. You do it because that's who you are at your core, and that works for you. So you reconnect to this high frequency that already exists. It exists in all of us. That high consciousness exists in all of us, just like the low consciousness exists in all of us. But wanting to drive your own vessel and seeing it from a perspective of, this is good for me, like I like this feels good, this is the way I want to live, this is how I want to interact with others, I want to do the right thing no matter what somebody else might do to me. I still want to do what I know is right, because that's who I choose to be, that's how I choose to vibrate in this existence. That to me is a superpower. And if everybody had that in them, that they were so connected to making those choices, the world wouldn't be in the state it's in. I mean, that to me is like a no-brainer. But at the same time, it's also argued that, this is the thing about philosophy, there's never a conclusion you can come to, but it's also argued that you can't tell somebody else how to live their life. And you can't. You can show people, hey, there's a better way to do this, or there's a different way to do this that could feel nice rather than feel awful. There's even a better way to do this that could feel nice for the whole planet of people rather than feel awful for all the people. And then you make choice. Do I want to do this or don't I? Because that's what it will always boil down to, that choice. And if you're going to keep making choices from the subconscious part of your being that just wants to fit in and doesn't want to be seen as different or weird, or be doing this work to know yourself honestly, which is totally different to what we're taught, and therefore you feel a bit like a fish out of water. But when you're willing to do that, you have the capacity to vibrate higher. And isn't that, I don't know, something that makes sense to want to attain to wanting to be better, to wanting others to feel better, to wanting people to have wonderful experiences, because you get wonderful experiences from higher frequency. From the lower frequency, you get the shit show that presents itself on earth. Yet each one of us have the power to choose the higher frequency at any point. We just need to have the awareness that we can make that choice in the first place, and then we can take back our sovereignty. Then we can drive our vehicles. Now, in the next episode, I'm going to talk about, again, my ideal world and how I see it, and what I would see as a way in which to solve planet Earth's issue. But at the same time, I also understand that that isn't my place to decide. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to present the possibility to those who it does make sense to people who think, I'd like to vibe higher, I'd like to self-actualize, I'd like to know myself, I'd like to be nice just because it feels good, not giving a fuck what other people think of me, because being nice can have the same effect as being a douchebag. People will judge you either way, and who cares? Because it's always going to trigger people. It's going to trigger people when you're a douche, and it's going to trigger people who perhaps are douches and feel like their existence is threatened. Like, there's always going to be that while we're here in this duality and the contrasting life experience. But ultimately, I do want to present what I can see as an ideal solution to planet Earth, but I'll also be realistic in what I'm going to propose. And I'm even going to add my children's perspectives, because it's very interesting to hear what they think about this world and their place and what they feel about living in the world and what they can and can't do, the freedom inside themselves, or the autonomy over their own beings that they might feel. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I will be around again in the next one.